The first thing I became aware of was the sound. A steady, rhythmic beeping, a metronome counting out the seconds of my new reality. It was insistent, clinical, and completely indifferent. The second was the smell, that uniquely sharp scent of antiseptic and sterile linen that screams hospital louder than any sign ever could. Then came the pain. It wasn't a single sharp agony, but a dull orchestral throb emanating from my leg, my ribs, my head, a symphony of hurt conducted by a violent, unseen maestro. My hand, heavy as lead, fluttered instinctively to the curve of my belly. It was still there, a firm, round mountain under the thin hospital blanket. 7 months. 28 weeks of hopes and dreams, of tiny flutters that had grown into reassuring kicks. Inside me was Maya. My Maya. My daughter. My breath hitched, a fresh wave of pain lancing through my chest. Was she okay? The question was a primal scream in the silent chamber of my mind, drowning out everything else. My eyes cracked open, adjusting to the dim light of the private room. The rhythmic beeping was from the fetal monitor beside my bed, its digital screen displaying the strong, steady beat of her tiny heart. 145 beats per minute. A wave of relief so profound it felt like nausea washed over me. She was alive. We were alive. It was only then, after the terror for my baby subsided by a fraction, that I noticed the second silence. The one that wasn't clinical or peaceful but vast and empty. I turned my head, wincing as my neck muscles screamed in protest, and looked at the visitor's chair. It was empty. A sterile beige vinyl chair, pushed neatly against the wall. It was a space meant to be filled. It was his space. Mark. I whispered, my voice a dry and used croak. Silence. The accident played back in my mind in jagged, terrifying flashes. The glare of oncoming headlights on the rain-slicked pavement. Mark's hands clenched on the steering wheel, his face illuminated in a ghastly white light. We were arguing about something stupid, something about money, about the cost of the new crib I'd picked out. He was driving too fast, his anger a tangible pressure in the small car. I remember the screech of tires, a sound that seemed to last an eternity, and then the horrifying, deafening crunch of metal twisting and glass exploding. My last conscious thought was a desperate, prayerful plea, wrapping my arms around my belly. Please, not her. Take anything but not her. Now in this silent room, the echo of that crash felt less terrifying than the emptiness of that chair. He had been here. I remembered his face, pale and stricken, as the paramedics loaded me into the ambulance. He held my hand, his was trembling. I'm right here, Sarah. I'm not going anywhere, he'd said. His words were a lifeline in a swirling vortex of pain and fear. A nurse bustled in, her rubber-soled shoes squeaking softly on the linoleum. She was older, with kind eyes crinkled at the corners and a name tag that read Carol. She smiled gently as she checked my foredrip. How are you feeling, honey? The doctor will be in to talk to you soon. Your vitals are stable and the baby's heartbeat is looking beautiful and strong. You've got a little fighter in there. Mark. I asked again, the name tasting like ash. My fiancé, was he here? Is he okay? Carol's smile tightened just a little, her gaze softening with a pity that made my stomach clench. He was here earlier. Said he needed to go make some calls, handle the insurance paperwork from the accident. He said he'd be back. She said the words, but we both heard the lie hanging in the air between us. He had been gone for hours. The sun was setting, painting the window in strokes of orange and purple. No calls. No texts. I had tried his phone until my battery died, each unanswered ring chipping away at my desperate hope, leaving behind a cold, hard dread. He wasn't handling paperwork. He wasn't stuck in traffic. He was gone. The argument in the car. It wasn't just about a crib. It was the culmination of weeks of tension. The whispers of financial trouble he'd tried to shield me from. The way his smiles had stopped reaching his eyes. I had chosen to ignore the signs, burying my head in the blissful sands of nursery planning and picking out tiny lavender onesies. I believed our love and the imminent arrival of our daughter was an impenetrable fortress that could withstand any storm. But it wasn't a fortress. It was a house of cards, and the storm had just hit. The doctor came in later, a tall man with a serious face that did little to comfort me. He explained the extent of my injuries. A fractured tibia in my left leg, 3 broken ribs, a concussion and severe bruising. You're very lucky, Miss Collins, he said, his eyes flicking from his chart to my face. And so is your daughter. But his tone held a warning. However, the trauma from the impact has caused a small placental abruption. It's minor for now, but we need to keep you here for observation. There's a significant risk of premature labor. We need to keep you on strict bed rest and monitor the baby constantly. The goal right now is to keep her in there for as long as we possibly can. Strict bed rest. Placental abruption. Risk of premature labor. The medical terms swirled in my head, each one a new monster lurking in the shadows. I was trapped. A prisoner in my own broken body, tethered to a bed by tubes and wires, my baby's life hanging precariously in the balance. And I was utterly, completely alone. The next few days blurred into a monotonous cycle of pain, fear, and a deepening despair. Each time the door opened, a pathetic, traitorous part of my heart would leap, praying to see Mark's face, ready to forgive any excuse he could offer. But it was always a nurse, a doctor, or an orderly. The empty chair became a monument to his abandonment, mocking me with its silent presence. The physical pain was manageable with medication, but the emotional agony was a cancer, metastasizing through my soul. I'd stare at the ceiling for hours, hot tears streaming silently. Into my hair, my hand resting on my belly, whispering apologies to Maya. I'm so sorry, little one. I'm so sorry I chose a father who could do this. I'm sorry our life is starting this way. Carol, the kind nurse, became my only real human connection. She'd linger a little longer than necessary when she checked my vitals, fluffing my pillows and talking about her own grandchildren. She never mentioned Mark, but she saw the truth. She saw the untouched meal trays, the way I'd flinch when a phone rang in the hallway, the dark circles under my eyes that had nothing to do with physical pain. One afternoon, a woman from the hospital's billing department came to my room. She was polite but firm, a clipboard her shield and a pen her sword. Miss Collins, we're having trouble locating your insurance information. The policy number your fiancé provided at admission appears to be invalid. My blood ran cold. Invalid? That can't be right. He handled all of that. He works in finance, he's meticulous with these things. She gave me another one of those pitying looks. According to the provider, the policy was cancelled 2 months ago for non-payment. 2 months. He had been lying to me for 2 months, letting me believe we were covered, secure. The image of him smiling as we bought a top-of-the-line car seat flashed in my mind, and I felt a fresh wave of nausea. It was all a performance. Every promise, every gentle touch, every whispered word about our future was a lie. He hadn't just left me. He had systematically dismantled my life, my security, and my future without me even knowing it. The accident hadn't caused this. It had just revealed the truth. It was his escape hatch from a reality he had no intention of facing. The woman left a folder full of financial aid applications and payment plan options on my bedside table. The numbers inside were astronomical, a mountain of debt I had no possible way to climb. I was unemployed, having left my job as a waitress a few weeks prior on his insistence for a stress-free final trimester. My savings account held less than $1,000. That night, the full weight of my situation crashed down on me. I was broken, pregnant, and facing a crushing medical crisis. I was about to be buried under a mountain of debt. And the man who had promised to protect me and our child had vanished, leaving me to face the wreckage alone. I pulled the thin blanket over my head, muffling my sobs into the pillow, feeling the kicks and movements of my daughter inside me. She was the only thing I had left, a tiny, innocent life completely dependent on her shattered mother. How in the world was I going to protect her? How could I bring her into a world when mine had just been so completely and utterly destroyed? The folder from the billing department sat on my bedside table, a pale yellow herald of doom. I couldn't bring myself to open it again. The numbers I had briefly scanned felt like a life sentence, each digit a link in a chain that was already wrapped tight around my neck. The hospital room, once a sanctuary where I was being healed, began to feel like a prison. The rhythmic beep of Maya's heart monitor, which had initially been a comfort, now sounded like a ticking clock, counting down to a future I was completely unequipped to provide for. My days were measured in small humiliations. Learning to navigate the few feet to the bathroom on crutches with a cast on my leg and a bulging belly was a precarious, painful ordeal. I had to ask for help with everything from reaching the water pitcher to adjusting my pillows. Every request felt like an admission of failure, a reminder of my utter helplessness. The nurses were kind, but they were busy. I was just one patient among many, a name on a chart, a collection of symptoms to be managed. The world outside my window continued on, oblivious. I'd watch cars stream by on the street below, imagining the people inside them going home to their families, their problems mundane and manageable. They weren't facing homelessness. They weren't wondering how they would afford diapers when they couldn't even afford the bill for their own delivery. The sense of isolation was a physical presence, a heavy blanket that smothered me day and night. A few days later, a social worker named Ms. Albright visited me. She had a kind but professional demeanor, her voice soft and practiced, the kind of voice designed to deliver difficult news without causing a scene. She sat in the vinyl chair, his chair, and folded her hands over a file with my name on it. "Sarah," she began, "we need to talk about a discharge plan." Discharge. The word should have sounded like freedom, but it sounded like a death knell. Where would I go? My apartment, I started, but my voice wavered. I hadn't been able to reach our landlord. Ms. Albright's expression was full of a practiced empathy that offered no real comfort. "I took the liberty of contacting the building manager, Sarah. I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you this, but an eviction notice was served. The rent is 3 months in arrears. The landlord has already begun proceedings to clear the apartment." The floor fell out from beneath me. My home. The nursery I had spent weeks painting that perfect shade of lavender. Maya's crib, the one Mark had promised to build, still in its flat-pack box in the corner. All of it gone. Every physical piece of the life I thought I was building had been erased. I wasn't just abandoned, I was expunged. "So I have nothing," I stated, the words flat and lifeless. "No home. No money." "We have resources," Ms. Albright said gently, though her words felt anything but. "There are women's shelters that prioritize pregnant women and new mothers. They can provide a safe place for you and the baby while you get back on your feet. We can also discuss other options if you feel you're not in a position to parent right now." She trailed off, letting the word hang in the air between us. Adoption. She didn't say it, but I heard it. A hot, furious wave of something protective and primal surged through me. It was the first strong emotion I had felt other than grief or fear. I pushed myself up in the bed, ignoring the searing pain in my ribs. "No," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "That is not an option. She's my daughter. She's all I have. I am not giving her up." My outburst seemed to startle her. She nodded quickly, making a note on her file. "Of course. I just have to make you aware of all the possibilities. The shelters are a good option, Sarah. They're safe." But all I could picture was bringing my brand new baby home to a crowded, sterile room full of strangers. Another charity case, another broken family. The shame was a physical taste, bitter in the back of my throat. This wasn't the life I had promised my daughter. I had whispered so many dreams to her through the wall of my skin, telling her about the sunny nursery, the lullabies I would sing, the safety and warmth of the home we would have. It was all gone. That night the stress took its toll. A sudden sharp cramping seized my abdomen, fierce and terrifying. The numbers on the monitor beside my bed went haywire. Alarms began to shriek, and in seconds, the room was flooded with nurses and a doctor I hadn't seen before. "She's having contractions for minutes apart," someone yelled. "Prep a magnesium drip now." They moved around me with urgent, efficient panic. I couldn't follow what was happening. All I could feel was the intense cramping and a terror so absolute it stole the air from my lungs. It was too soon. It was too early for her to come. My body, under the siege of relentless stress and heartbreak, was failing in its most essential duty, keeping my baby safe. "Please," I sobbed, grabbing Carol's arm as she adjusted my fore. "Please, you have to stop it. It's not time. She's not ready." "We're doing everything we can, honey," Carol soothed, her voice a small point of calm in the chaos. "Just try to breathe. We've got you. We've got the baby." They managed to stop the labor. The magnesium drip felt like fire in my veins, but the contractions slowly, mercifully subsided. The room emptied out, leaving behind the lingering scent of adrenaline and my own raw fear. I lay shaking, drenched in a cold sweat, my hand protectively clutching my belly. Maya was quiet, as if she too were exhausted by the ordeal. The doctor returned later, his face grim. "That was too close, Sarah. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. We've managed the contractions for now, but your body is under an immense amount of stress. We can't have another episode like that. You need to eliminate as much stress from your life as possible. I almost let out a hysterical laugh. Eliminate stress? My entire existence was a black hole of stress. It was all I had left. I simply nodded, too exhausted to explain the utter absurdity of his command. As I lay there, feeling the phantom pains of the contractions, I felt myself drifting toward a dangerous edge. A small, insidious voice in the back of my mind whispered how easy it would be to just give up. To let go. The fight felt too hard, the mountain too high to climb. I had failed at everything. I had chosen the wrong man, built a life on a foundation of lies, and now my own body was betraying my child. Maybe Ms. Albright was right. Maybe Maya would be better off with someone else. Someone stable. Someone who wasn't me. I closed my eyes, letting the tears fall again. I can't do this, I whispered to the silent room. I'm not strong enough. I lay there in the semi-darkness, the doctor's warning echoing in my ears, and let the hopelessness wash over me. The fight was gone. I was a ship, broken and rudderless, being pulled under by the waves. I closed my eyes, picturing Maya's face, a face I hadn't even seen yet, and I whispered a final apology. I'm sorry, baby girl. Mommy just isn't strong enough. Just then the door creaked open softly. It was Carol, her shift long over. She was out of her scrubs, wearing a simple pair of jeans and a sweater. She wasn't holding a chart or a thermometer. She was holding 2 paper cups of what smelled like chamomile tea. She placed one on my bedside table and pulled the vinyl chair close, the legs scraping quietly against the floor. For the first time, seeing someone in that chair didn't feel like a betrayal. Felt like a kindness. She didn't say anything for a long time. We just sat in a comfortable silence, the only sound the steady beat of Maya's heart on the monitor. You know, she finally said, her voice low and gentle, 30 years ago I was you. I opened my eyes and looked at her. Her face, usually so composed and professional, held a deep, remembered pain. Not a car accident, she continued, staring at the cup in her hands. But my son's father. He just decided one day he wasn't ready. Packed a bag while I was at my obstetrician appointment and was gone. Left a note on the fridge. I was 22. I had a part-time job at a diner and a tiny apartment I couldn't afford on my own. I remember lying awake at night, just like you, absolutely convinced that I had failed my baby before he even had a chance. She looked up at me, her gaze direct and full of a profound understanding that no doctor or social worker could ever have. I know that look in your eyes, Sarah. It's the look of someone who's standing on the edge of a cliff, and the only thing you can think about is how quiet the fall would be. Am I right? A sob escaped my throat, raw and ragged. I nodded, unable to speak. I'm here to tell you not to jump, she said, her voice firm but kind. It feels impossible right now. Feels like you have nothing. But you have everything that matters right there. She nodded toward my belly. She is your reason to take a step back from that edge. She is your reason to fight. How? I finally managed to choke out. How can I fight? I have nowhere to go, Carol. I'm going to be discharged to a homeless shelter. My baby's first home will be a cot in a room full of strangers. What kind of a start is that? How is that fair to her? Carol took a deep breath. No, it's not fair. What happened to you wasn't fair. But you can't let his weakness be the end of your story. So here's a new plan. My son is grown and out of the house. I have a spare bedroom that does nothing but collect dust. It's small. The wallpaper is horribly outdated. But it's clean, it's warm, and it's safe. You come home with me. You and Maya. You stay as long as you need to get on your feet. No rent. No strings. Just a helping hand. Because 30 years ago, a woman I barely knew did the same for me and it saved my life. It's my turn to pay it forward. I stared at her, speechless. The sheer, unadulterated kindness of her offer was like a flash of lightning in my suffocating darkness. It was so unexpected, so generous, it didn't seem real. Strangers weren't supposed to do this. People weren't supposed to be this good. The tears streaming down my face were no longer tears of despair, but of a shattering, overwhelming gratitude. I can't, I stammered. I couldn't possibly ask you to do that. You didn't ask, she said with a small smile. I offered. Now your only job is to rest, drink this tea and focus on keeping that little bun in your oven for a few more weeks. Let me worry about the rest. We'll figure it out. Together. Together. That one word was the lifeline I so desperately needed. It was the anchor in the storm. For the first time since the crash, I wasn't alone. That night, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I slept without the suffocating weight of fear on my chest. I had a path forward. It wasn't the one I had planned, but it was a path. And for the first time I felt the flicker of a forgotten sensation. Hope. The next 3 weeks were a quiet blur of healing. My body began to mend, but more importantly my spirit did. Carol was true to her word. She helped me navigate the labyrinth of social assistance programs, filling out paperwork for emergency medical coverage and food aid. She brought me books from her house and sat with me while we watched old movies on the tiny hospital TV. She treated me not as a charity case but as family. Then one rainy morning, for weeks after the accident, Maya decided it was time. My labor was fast and intense, but it wasn't chaotic and terrifying like the last time. Carol was there, holding my hand, her voice a constant, calming presence, telling me to breathe, telling me I was strong, telling me I could do this. And in a final monumental push, my daughter entered the world with a healthy, lusty cry that was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. They placed her on my chest, so tiny and perfect, her downy hair plastered to her head, her little fists waving in the air. I looked into her wide, dark eyes and the world fell away. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the fear, it all dissolved in the face of the overwhelming, unconditional love I felt for this tiny human. He was real. She was safe. He was mine. In that moment, I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that we were going to be okay. Mark's betrayal hadn't broken me. It had forged me into a mother. His abandonment wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of ours. Bringing Maya home to Carol's little house was a world away from the future I had once imagined. There was no designer nursery, no state-of-the-art baby gear. Her crib was a second-hand bassinet Carol had found online, and her room was the small, quiet space with the faded floral wallpaper. But it was filled with more love and safety than our big empty apartment ever had. It was a real home. Watching Maya sleep in her bassinet, her little chest rising and falling, I finally understood. Strength isn't about having the perfect life or never falling down. It's about what you do when you're broken and bruised at the bottom of a ravine. It's about accepting a hand up, even from a stranger. It's about finding the courage to take that next single step, for the tiny person who is counting on you. The life I had lost wasn't real. It was a fragile dream built on a foundation of lies. The life I was building now was real. It was hard, it was humble, but it was honest, and it was ours. If my story has touched you in any way, if you've ever found yourself in a darkness that felt inescapable, or if you've ever been lifted up by the unexpected kindness of another person, I want you to know that you are not alone. These moments, these trials, they don't just break us. They have the power to remake us into something stronger and more resilient than we ever imagined. Your journey and your struggles are valid. If you feel comfortable, please share a part of your own story of survival or hope in the comments below. Even a simple heart can let someone else know they're not invisible. Your voice and your experience matter. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories of the incredible strength of the human spirit. Thank you for listening, and never, ever forget the power you have within you to turn an ending into a new beginning.